More than likely, it is the end of an era in San Antonio. Gregg Popovich, who many believe is the greatest coach in the history of the NBA, Gregg Popovich is out for the remainder of the season and could possibly have coached his final game in the NBA. Now, for those that don't know, Gregg Popovich has been out since November. He had a mild stroke and he has been at home recovering ever since. He met with the team yesterday to announce that he would not be returning this season. And although he said he would like to coach in the future, at 76 years old, I have my doubts. Even though he has earned the right to walk away whenever he wants, at his age with a multitude of health problems, probably time for Gregg Popovich to walk away. NBA season is long. It's brutal. The traveling, the road trips. It's tough when you're 25 or 30 years old, much less pushing 80. If Gregg Popovich does retire, he will be remembered as one of the greatest coaches in the history of the league. But his legacy is not stainless. Oftentimes, when we look back at the legacy of coaches and players, we have a tendency to remember them fondly. When people think about the career of Kobe Bryant, we don't reminisce about the situation in Colorado. We don't talk about Kobe allegedly quitting on his team in the playoffs. When we remember Kobe, we remember the 5 championships, the 3-peat with Shaq, winning back-to-back titles with Pau Gasol and Lamar Odom. When we remember Michael Jordan, we don't talk about Slim Bueller. We don't talk about his obsession with gambling. We remember Michael Jordan's greatness. We remember the golden era of the NBA in the 90s. When we think about legacies, we often remember the positives and overlook the negatives. But unfortunately for Gregg Popovich, I don't know if that's going to be the case. Because with one decision, Gregg Popovich severely damaged and damn near destroyed the public's perception of the NBA. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. If you happen to stumble upon this video, be sure to check out my main channel, Behind the Line. Link to the main channels in the description below. Obviously, when discussing the legacy of Gregg Popovich, we could talk about his dedication to the woke wiener. Outside of the NBA, they don't call him coach. They refer to him as deacon because Gregg is a proud deacon at Woke United Methodist. Over the years, he has used the NBA platform to discuss the dangers of Columbus Day. Why are we celebrating the white man? He stole land from the Guardians. He was on the front lines in the NBA's fight against mythical racism. Deacon Gregg, he is known to talk about the mythical oppression in America, but 10 years from now, all that will be forgotten. What won't be forgotten is the fact that Gregg Popovich, he is largely responsible for starting load management. 12 or 13 years ago, Spurs were playing the Heat. It was a Thursday night game on TNT, nationally televised. If I remember correctly, it was either the front end or the back end of a back-to-back for the Spurs. I can't remember the exact reason, but I want to say that Gregg Popovich was upset with NBA Commissioner David Stern. As a way to piss off the commissioner and rest his players at the same time, Gregg Popovich, he refused to play damn near his entire starting lineup. Because he's not a giant pussy like some other commissioner we know, David Stern, he fined Gregg Popovich $250,000, and I think he fined the Spurs $1 million. That night was the beginning of load management. Going forward, Gregg Popovich, he would sit Tim Duncan for a variety of reasons. Rest, relaxation, bruise, caboose. Hell, at one point, Gregg Popovich claimed that he was sitting Tim Duncan because he was old. On the injury report, it said, Tim Duncan out, old. When the winningest coach in NBA history makes a decision like that, it's not surprising when the rest of the league follows his lead, which is exactly what happened. Gregg Popovich created this culture in the NBA where it's acceptable to miss games in the regular season. Running a fever? Don't play. Hungover? Don't play. Hemorrhoid the size of the Lizzo's thumb? Don't play. Before load management, The regular season, it was treated like it actually mattered. You guys remember the Malice in the Palace, where the Pistons and the Pacers, they were fighting each other on the court, then they started fighting with the fans inside the arena? Back in the mid-2000s, the Pistons and the Pacers, they were heated rivals. They were fighting each other during a game that was being played in November. Today, you could put boxing gloves on NBA players and they'd still be afraid to throw a punch. Back then, they're fighting during the regular season in November. When I talk about LeBron James, and we might be talking about LeBron tomorrow, either here or on the main channel, but when I talk about LeBron and his legacy, I always say that LeBron James is going to be remembered as the first face of the NBA to leave the league in worse shape than it was in when he was drafted. Now, when LeBron was drafted back in 2003, the NBA was struggling. It was a disaster. But somehow, he's managed to take that destruction and make it even worse. Gregg Popovich, he might be remembered the same way. On paper, his resume is flawless. This dude made the playoffs 22 consecutive years. From 1997 to 2019, the Spurs were in the playoffs. You can make a strong case that it's the most dominant run in the history of sports. And he wasn't doing this in New York. He wasn't doing this in Boston or Los Angeles. Gregg Popovich built a dynasty in San Antonio. He proved that a small market team could dominate the league. The Spurs, they were often criticized for being boring. They weren't flashy. They didn't have mainstream star players. Their brand of basketball wasn't exactly great for television, but it was effective. On paper, his resume is flawless. But just like LeBron James, Gregg Popovich, he's going to leave the NBA in worse shape than it was in when he started coaching. Even though Gregg Popovich is saying that he wants to come back, I think the Spurs will probably move on. You've got a generational talent that you need to build around. And it's hard to recruit free agents when you have no idea who in the hell the coach is going to be. I hate to see Gregg Popovich go out this way. Even though I don't agree with him politically, I do respect his greatness. You want to see legends like that go out on their own terms. Unfortunately, though, for Gregg Popovich, that does not seem to be the case. Looks like his health is going to force him into retirement. How is he going to be remembered, though? Obviously, we will remember the achievements, the 4 titles, the 22 consecutive years in the playoffs, but will Gregg Popovich also be remembered for damaging the NBA? Let me know. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys tomorrow.